Hello, I'm Angela Princewell, and on this segment of Ask AP, the question I'm answering goes, we just separated and I'd like to see my kids for Christmas and New Year. How do we share this? Great question, especially at this time of the year with Christmas just around the corner. Um, Unfortunately, you're having to deal with the separation at this time as well. I truly wish you and your family all the best as you navigate this. But to drill down to your question, first off, as usual, there's no one size fits all. It really depends on the circumstances of your family. So when you say, how do you share this? Whatever I'm going to be telling you here really are just suggestions because sometimes there's factors like family violence, the necessity of a supervised parenting arrangement, special needs for the children, things like that, that might factor into your family specific situation. For a lot of people, the Christmas would be split with the children kind of spending time with both parents. So I'm going to throw out a couple of options. So one option is where, you have the children sleep in mom's house for from say the 24th until the 25th, possibly at noon or 1 p.m., whatever. And then dad, I'm assuming if this is a scenario with mom and dad, and then dad picks up the children at noon or 1 p.m. and has the children with him until the very next day. So what that means in this scenario is the morning of Christmas, the children get to open their gifts, in one parent's home. In that case, if it's mom that has that day, for example, then Christmas morning, and then they can leave. Some people even just to ensure that the day doesn't go too far in before they get the opportunity to open gifts with the kids, would even say, Christmas Eve until about 10 a.m. in one home, in dad's home, for example, and then 10 a.m. until the next day, Boxing Day, with at mom's home, just so that the children kind of experience the Christmas morning there. You want to also be mindful again with the needs of your children. You don't want to overwhelm them with this being the first Christmas that they are experiencing with their parents separated. So if at all appropriate in your case, maybe you could have Christmas morning together, for example. So the children, if you're particular about spending the Christmas day and New Year's Day or Eve or whatever, the particular holiday you want to make sure that you're there for. Christmas is a big one because for a lot of kids, especially if they're younger, there's the excitement around Santa and all the toys they get. So if that's the case, then you might want to spend that morning together, right? So wherever you agree on who's home to meet in, and the children wake up and you have that Christmas morning together. And then, one parent, if they stayed overnight Christmas Eve in one home, then they could go to the other's home after, gifts have been opened and things like that. Now, that option is obviously only applicable in the most amicable of circumstances. For a lot of newer separations, parties are usually not there. So perhaps consider again the first option of Christmas Eve to maybe noon or whatever time's appropriate in the circumstances in one home, and then the other half of Christmas at the other home, sleeping over into Boxing Day. That again, it depends on whether overnight is appropriate. If you're dealing with a scenario where overnight is not appropriate, then it doesn't have to work out that way, right? If it's Christmas morning with one parent and then they go back, or afternoon and then they go back to the other parent, that's the way it would work out. So again, as you can see, there's a lot of ways to share this. An option that I generally like as well is avoiding the back and forth, because the options I've all discussed, all include, the children spending Christmas Eve in one place and then Christmas morning in that same place, but spending the rest of Christmas in another home. If your traditions don't necessarily include any of those particular days, you could do things a little bit differently. So some families actually get together and have, their Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve, for example. So, if that's one person's family tradition, that's something you can do and then have the kids open their gifts on that day, right? So that way the children are in one home Christmas Eve, and they can be dropped off at the other home, spend the night, and wake up Christmas Day at the other home, spend their time there. Or it may not even involve an overnight at all. If all that's happening is, a family dinner or whatever the tradition is, followed by spending, opening gifts, spending time with the children, that's still workable. So, I know I've thrown a lot of information and options at you, but if I want to paint it in sort of a big picture way, you can split Christmas Day with the children, having spent, one night overnight in one place, and spend the next, up from Christmas Day until the next day, or however much longer you want to split that, in one home and in the other. So I don't know if that even made things any more clear or more complicated, but the idea is you split Christmas Day morning in one place and then the rest of the day elsewhere. That's one option. Another option could just be leave the children as is. If there's a possibility that there's still the home where they're used to having Christmas, they can remain in that home. And then the other parent that's moved out can come spend, that Christmas with them at that home. That's one option. And another option could be just having Christmas Eve all day, Christmas Eve in one home, and all day Christmas in another home. And it may or may not include overnights, depending on the circumstances of your family. Everything I've said regarding Christmas also would apply to New Year's, right? So New Year's Eve in one place and then New Year's Day and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of ways to go about this. Now, in all of this, and I know this is not part of the question, but and I don't really have the ages of the children here, but I'm assuming that they're younger. And if that's the case, or if they're younger kids of school age, then I'm thinking, what about the rest of the days, right? And that's not part of this question, but you also have to understand that the Christmas Day and the Christmas Eve are treated differently from the rest of the holidays. And by that, I mean one party, the parents could choose to split the Christmas break, which typically starts right about the week of Christmas. I believe this year it's starting around the 24th of December and leads into the new year. I think the 8th or something. I could be wrong with the dates, but there's that 2-week break for a lot of schools in Ontario. Depending on, again, the parenting arrangement that works in your kid's best interest, you could share that time, but the way you share Christmas is independent of how you share the entire holiday. It's in some cases because sometimes people would say, well, I want the first week of Christmas. Well, if you have that first week of the Christmas break, then the children are spending, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day in one home. And then I don't even know, depending on how the calendar plays out, they potentially will get, New Year's Day in the other home, if that's the way it's split. For people that don't celebrate Christmas, that might be an appropriate way to share that. But if you're celebrating Christmas and, you have traditions that you want to share with the kids, then, you might want to consider breaking it up and dealing with those specific days, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, as independent days outside of the rest of the Christmas holidays. So I hope that wasn't too complicated. There's no one size fits all in these situations. I do hope in all that you come up with an arrangement that allows you to have, as good a Christmas as is possible during what I can imagine is a difficult time. All the best to you. And until next time, it's bye for now. Happy holidays.